Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is Season 6, Episode 4, Restore the Republic. And today, we will be talking about the Delegation of 2000 deleted scenes from Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, not only because they are super timely considering our current political climate, but because they also add a lot of context into the motivations of multiple of the characters in Episode 3 that kind of, add into what was happening. And it's kind of a shame that they were deleted out because it's in total, it's a little under 5 minutes. So it feels kind of a push to have deleted those scenes. But anyway, Goose, it was your idea to talk about this today. So what motivated you to have this topic?
Well, you said a lot of the reason, right? And it's a
Yeah.
lot of the literal, the front facing reasons of
Right.
why it's topical to talk about it. But also, I mean,
Mhm.
there's it's an onion, right? This is the Shrek moment of why the Delegation of 2000 is relevant. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
deleted scenes from Revenge of the Sith, and for a 2025 that we're only a month and a half in, it feels like the longest year ever. Now with
Yeah. It's
Revenge
been
of the
rough.
Sith,
Mhm.
it's its 20th anniversary, which is
That's
insane to
crazy.
think about. We're 2025, a hellscape of a year, and now we're celebrating 2 decades of Revenge of the Sith, which I gotta give it to Uncle George Lucas, when he wrote these films. We didn't think we liked the politics back then, but what a time to bring back Revenge of the Sith and those deleted scenes, because they are
Yep.
more relevant now than I think they ever have been. So I'm
Correct.
sorry, George. I apologize for doubting a lot of the things you did with the politics in Star Wars. But
Yeah.
if it's not, I mean, if 20 years of Revenge of the Sith isn't insane enough to think about, it is also, I mean, in December, mind you, but in December will be 10 years of The Force Awakens,
That is
which is
insane.
also absurd. It's like,
Yeah.
what
I can't believe
world?
it. How?
I still think it's 2020. I still think COVID started right now.
Oh my
And
God.
we've gone through 2 presidential administrations. We might be stuck on this third one for a while.
Until he
Uh,
dies.
and well, well. Speaking of
You know?
politics and presidential administrations, Nani, you were finally sworn in after like a long journey of study. And how does it feel now to be part of the judiciary when the judiciary is under attack?
Yeah. It's kind of an insane moment. I mean, for all of us in general. I mean, some of the pronouncements that have been coming out, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but the fact that, RFK got confirmed, I think
Mhm,
kind of blew us all out of the water, considering that, the Secretary of Health is an anti vaxxer.
mhm, mhm,
And I mean, if the appointment would have happened during COVID, we would all be dead, you
mhm,
know? So it's kind of insane. I mean, this man has made statements that he's admitted that worms are eating his brain and like crazy stuff like this, and he wants to eliminate psychotropic drugs.
mhm,
I
mhm,
mean, the country, we've already talked about this a bunch of times, is because we know that a lot of Star Wars characters needed mental health
mhm,
treatments.
mhm,
So
mhm.
we live in a country that has major mental health issues, and now the Secretary of Health wants to get rid of really important medications that form an integral part in treating many of
Mhm.
these psychiatric illnesses because they're actual illnesses. It's not, just made up like he wants it to sound like. I don't know. It's really scary times that we're looking at, and with this Supreme Court that, instead of kind of looking to the future, just keeps kind of taking us back to the
Mhm,
past.
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
instead of giving rights, they're taking away rights.
mhm,
it's and it's very timely to the conversation now that we get into what was said in these deleted scenes, that it's like how they're kind of chipping away at the Constitution, and that's kind of what's happening right
mhm,
now.
mhm,
I mean, it's really hard to get an amendment passed, but through the Supreme Court and
mhm,
other laws, they're chipping away at rights anyway. So it's a really scary time to live in, and not honestly so much for us. I really worry about my nieces,
mhm,
you know not even so much my nephew, because things aren't always that hard for men. um but it's always been hard for women, and now, a lot of rights that were gained in the past few decades are being taken away. So I fear a lot for what the future looks like for my nieces, and I think everybody who has young children or in their lives in any way, shape, or form should be actively terrified, and we can't just do nothing about this.
Yeah, it's a definitely kind of a terrifying environment to be in when the institutions that were created to house professionals that will study, research, and implement policy for the protection of our
Yeah.
society and our culture all of a sudden are dismantled by people that have no idea what they're talking about
Yeah, and they
just
want to like
because.
abolish like the education department.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
oh yes, ignorance is the way to go. It's so insane. I feel like we're living in the dystopian future that
mhm,
I
mhm,
just never imagined. I mean, so many people are doing, references to A Handmaid's Tale, that it's
mhm,
actually,
mhm,
happening in our time. People joke about it, but they're saying like, "Oh, get used to it, women to be referred to of whoever."
mhm, mhm.
Of Joseph, of Matthew, of because it's kind of what it's leading up to, and
It is because there's that. I think it's the Save Act that is currently like going through the Senate, or I don't know what process it is in
yeah,
up in the legislature. Even though we know that the legislature doesn't function anymore, but
yep,
it's about like having to. It's about voter security, but one of the caveats about it is your name in your voter registration has to match your birth certificate, which is voter suppression, particularly for women that take on their
the
husband's
husband's
names.
name,
So all of a
yeah,
sudden now women won't be able to vote if they, can't find their birth certificate. Which let's be honest, who the hell has their birth certificate? And
yeah,
many people change their name, not just women, obviously, who are married. Many
yeah,
people change their name, so it's
yeah,
voter suppression. It's not voter security. But you were talking about constitutional amendments, and I thought that that was interesting because in this one, I have to say that the evil emperor of the Galactic Empire was
mhm.
better than the current administration because at
Yeah,
least he went through the process of
right,
constitutional
um,
amendments.
right,
Right now,
hmm
we're going through a system that is
hmm
subverting all manner of due process, and all of a
yep,
sudden we're here as spectators looking at this whole circus and just seeing no one bat an eye. Like the man literally said that he can't break a law if he's saving the country, which is things that Napoleon have said and other dictators in history.
yeah,
And it's just like, dude, like,
yep,
what are you doing?
and he's
Um,
totally getting away with it.
and he's getting away with it because
Yep,
there are no Mon Mothmas, there are no Bail Organas, and
hmm
definitely no Padme Amidalas that are in the Senate forming a delegation to stand up to them. All we have is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries doing nothing, just being defeatists and accepting the coup of this government. So with that, the delegation of 2000. What did you
yeah.
think of those?
So I actually didn't know that these deleted scenes existed
Mhm,
until you told me what you wanted to talk about tonight. So I was kind of blown away that
mhm,
these scenes were out there, and that, very sadly, were not included in the film. But I think it informs so much, and it adds so much to so many characters. I remember Mon Mothma saying in multiple interviews after, she started, after they started talking about Andor, about the fact that there was so much more to her character in the
mhm,
prequel films, and that a lot of it got edited out, and I think she did a fantastic job in those scenes,
mhm,
and it informs so much what we get from her, because she kind of tried to do it through the official procedures, and seeing that it failed, it brings so much to light into why she wanted to do it in a secretive way during
mhm,
Andor, you know and there's also so much to Amidala, because I felt like her character was done so dirty in Revenge of the Sith,
mhm.
that basically
Totally
all she
agree.
does
Yep.
is run around being pregnant and worrying about Annie, and oh my God,
Mhm,
is he okay? Is he not okay? Whatever. And here we see that she's still a senator. She's still trying to do well by the galaxy. And that she hadn't just given up because she's a mother. I mean, the fact
mhm,
that she
mhm,
was pregnant shouldn't have made her seem useless in this third
mhm.
film, which
Agreed.
always rubbed me the wrong way. So the fact that there was thought enough to have these scenes being filmed. And I think it was some of her best acting,
Mhm.
honestly, at least in, that last film, which really saddens me as to what the reasoning was for deleting these scenes. So I think it also informs a lot because it really feeds into the lack of trust that was building between Anakin and Padme. Like,
Mhm.
if she would have had the chance to kind of like talk to Anakin about it, I feel like it would have been like, I'm already having trust issues with Palpatine, you know? And instead of that, it just makes her seem secretive, which makes him double down on his distrust of
Mhm.
her, which
Mhm. Mhm.
just it makes way more sense about him losing trust in her, at the end, which to me was like too much like from 1 second to the next, oh, suddenly I want to kill you, you know?
Mhm.
So this kind of just adds into, okay, there was a building sense of mistrust between them. And
Right.
I think yeah,
Which
it's kind of
would have
crazy.
heightened why Anakin
Yeah,
was
why it's,
suspect of Obi-Wan and
yes.
her hooking up
Mhm.
because he actually would have been able to see that she was actually doing something in
Yeah,
secret behind his back. So
yeah,
it would have
yeah,
justified that a lot more. Totally agree.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep, and then it's also really crazy that that one scene where they're talking to the chancellor, like Anakin is already standing to his right side. I mean,
Mhm.
there's like so many like wonderful things, and even Padme's like outfit and hair, like in the last scenes, it's just like I don't know. It's there were so many magnificent things in those scenes, and obviously we talked about Bail Organa and how awesome he is, and just like we already see that he's starting to have this idea of like the rebellion because let's go through official channels, but we
Mhm.
probably know that they're going to fail, and it's kind of that the people that are intelligent and still have a modicum of power still trying to solve with debate at
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
point that it's
Mhm. Mhm.
clear that debate is going to accomplish nothing, and they kind of showed their hand when they formed the delegation of 2000 and already let Palpatine know that they're having issues with him.
Mhm.
So and it's kind of crazy, and it all comes back really full circle when they start announcing it's the first time you hear about the governors being
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
instated, which makes you think so much of A New Hope because that wasn't really mentioned in the prequels before. So there's a lot you get in those almost 5 minutes that I really don't understand why it was cut. So what did you think, Goose?
It's wild, right? Because it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things where there's this mythical cut of Revenge of the Sith that is allegedly 4 hours long, and I mean probably most, if not well, most, because we know that not all, but most of those scenes probably were never finished, and
Yeah.
no music to them, and no complete
Yeah.
CGI and all that stuff. So we'll probably never really know what that 4 hour cut of the
Would have looked
movie
like,
really
yeah.
looks like, but we
Mm-hmm.
do have like these small deleted scenes and this collection of scenes that pertains specifically to Padme and the Delegation of 2000 are just excellent. And it's one of those things where I wonder why they were cut because it's the movie's already 2.5 hours long. Like I think
Yep.
at the time it was the longest Star Wars film that had come out, and 5 minutes doesn't make or break a movie. So
Right.
I wonder why these scenes were ultimately cut. I'm sure there's an interview somewhere, or I have a book somewhere that
Yeah.
George talks about it, but obviously I don't know offhand. But in many ways, I think that it was maybe just a response to the backlash that he got from episode one and
And
episode
it being too
two,
political
and
and
being too political,
mhm,
and people don't want to hear about the taxation
mhm.
of routes, that led to the Trade Federation, all that stuff that back then was absurd and like, what is this doing in my Star Wars? Which now,
Yeah.
fast forward 20 years later, she's like, holy crap, George was ahead of the curve on all
Yeah.
of this. Eh, I wonder if that had a lot to do with the removal of these scenes, but
Yeah.
the politics aside, I totally agree that they were so important for Padme because, like you
Mhm.
said, she was an agent in episodes one and episode two, where she didn't have to rely on anyone else for her agency.
Yeah.
She's the one that drags Anakin in episode two to Geonosis to find out
Yeah.
where Obi-Wan is and uncover the Separatist plot and everything. And then, as you rightfully said, episode three, sadly and for the most part, she's just kind of a passive actor
Yeah.
waiting for plot X or plot Y to happen so that she can get to, the end of the movie and have Luke and Leia. I mean, obviously there's a little more complexity than that, but
But yeah,
there she doesn't do as much as
yeah,
Anakin and Obi-Wan do in this whole film. And for being part of the big three of that trilogy, it's kind of disappointing that we don't get to see her
yeah,
be her badass political self,
yeah,
especially when we know that these scenes exist and add the nuance that her character needed, and then enhance the complexity of the deteriorating relationship between her and Anakin. So
yeah.
it's
Hmm.
kind of a missed opportunity in so
Yeah,
in so many directions, like for
yeah, just all
Padme's
around.
character development,
Hmm.
for Padme and Anakin's relationship, for the plot overall of the fall of the Republic and Emperor Palpatine's rise, but then the
And the
setting
seeds
up
of rebellion
the setting
amongst the
up the
Senate.
seeds of
Hmm.
rebellion,
Hmm.
bringing in Mon Mothma, and obviously more for Bale to do as well. Which
Hmm.
gotta do always a shout out to our boy Jimmy Smits. The original space-papi.
Yep,
Bale Organa,
yep.
Puerto Rican descent. Our boy. We'll always take
Hmm.
more of him, which
Oh
ties
yeah.
then beautifully thematically with then obviously what we see in Rogue One with
Hmm.
Genevieve O'Reilly also returning to
Yep.
reprise the role that was cut, and then Jimmy Smits returning in Rogue One to seed everything that's going to happen in A New Hope. So now with Andor also, Andor season 2 coming in the horizon, it's just like this full circle moment that the delegation of 2000 is kind of that bridge to
Yeah.
gap all these holes that the absence
Yeah.
of those scenes created. But what was your impression though of seeing, because you said you weren't aware of
Yeah.
these deleted scenes, so I imagine that you didn't know that Mon Mothma was part of Revenge of the Sith.
No, no. I remember like Genevieve O'Reilly saying in interviews that she had, had scenes that were cut
Hmm.
in, but I wasn't expecting to see her, and she's always been so good at that
Hmm.
character. I mean, she like seamlessly stepped into the role, and to see the fact that even back in Revenge of the Sith, when all those scenes were cut, and the fact that the scenes were cut, and she was amenable to coming back into Rogue One, and
Hmm.
then obviously Andor, and the fact that she got so vindicated because she had such great character development in Andor.
Hmm.
So it was really surprising. But again, the most surprising thing is that the conversation begins about them talking about the regional governors, and then I
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
think about like Grand Moff Tarkin being
Tarkin,
like,
yeah.
you know, that infamous scene where it's like, oh, we finally put the nail on what is now uh
Hmm.
the galactic
Galactic
the
Senate, yeah.
Empire Senate,
The Imperial
the
Senate, yeah.
Imperial Senate. Yeah, because we're talking so much about the Republic now. And it's like, yep, now it's like officially completely disbanded. And it's like, how are you gonna handle all the systems? It's like, oh, the regional governors are gonna do that, and fear is the reason that everybody's gonna
Hmm.
obey. But even in that one scene, it's like, how would he instate like these regional governors? Is that's negating, the Senate. And Mon
Hmm.
Mothma's
Hmm.
already like, in practicality, like the Senate is,
Doesn't exist. Yep.
yeah, it's already been disbanded. Like we
Which
have no
chilling,
power.
chilling for her to say that in that deleted scene. All of a sudden, see what's happened
Yeah,
in the last 3 weeks, and be like, "Oh,
yeah,
it's not a movie."
no power, no power. O sea, on the face, it's still there. In all practicality, it doesn't exist. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist. We
Which
have an
which which
emperor, and
Mon
that's
Mothma says it right in that scene. She's like, "Why would he disband a
mhm,
group that actually is not standing against him, but the opposite? They want to join in the power with him." And it's just like, oh, shit. That's what everyone is doing. Even Democrats. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Democrats, by not actively talking against or standing for something, are actively enabling and sharing in the acquiescence of the power that's being established by this administration. So this scene is very poignant in kind of showing how to react in like the stages of grief in many ways, right?
yeah,
Because I think it's really interesting to see the dynamics between the three of those characters, Bale,
mhm,
Mon, and Padme, because they all are talking about the same thing, but they're all
yeah,
talking about it from completely different perspectives. It's
mhm,
like in many ways, Padme is she's a negation, She
Yeah.
doesn't want to
She's in
accept.
denial
She's
100%.
thank you. Thank you.
Mhm,
That's the word I was looking for.
mhm,
She's in denial and she just doesn't want to accept it, even though she sees it
mhm.
and she understands it. She's still in denial. Mon Mothma is, she's a centrist. She's just like, well, this has to change because this is kind of not good. But she's also not willing to just say the
Yeah.
words. Like
Mhm.
unlike Bale, it's just like, well, we need to do something about this
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah,
And and
yeah,
and,
like,
and
debating is we're way past debating. He's
yeah,
just like, "We gotta do something." Mhm.
that was so funny when he says that, and then he's like, "Excuse me, I don't want to sound like a separatist."
I am not a separatist. No, I just wanna save the republic from within the republic, you
Mhm.
know?
Which it's kind of a farce, right? And I think that
Mhm.
is even more important to then look at with what happened to the New Republic after the fall of the Empire and Mon Mothma coming in as Chancellor and trying to bring things to how it was. And it's just like, girl, like the way it was broken. And you're
We
trying to
already
go
knew it was
back.
broken. Why are you trying to
Exactly.
bring it again? Yeah.
You're
Mhm.
bringing back a system that just didn't work. And obviously, what didn't work then won't work now. So,
And it gets completely decimated in one movie, so, you know.
which man, like
Yeah.
JJ, come on,
Yeah.
you could have given
I
us
know.
a little
I
politics,
know.
just a
Yeah.
little, just a
Mhm.
little. There is one scene. I don't know. I think I sent it to you, but it wasn't part of of
Okay.
the video that had like all the delegation of 2000 scenes. But there is also one deleted scene from that that's very it's tangential to it, but obviously very relevant as well to everything that's going on. And it's basically a scene between Anakin and Palpatine, where
Mhm.
Palpatine point blank tells Anakin, like, "Hey, like, there's been an amendment in the Senate so that I can control the Jedi Council." And then
Okay.
Anakin is just like, "Oh, well," he doesn't bat an eye about it. Basically, he's just like, "Oh, well, I mean, I don't think they'll like that." He's just talking casually about, wait, this man just usurped an independent entity, which reminded me, like, oh, crap, this is exactly what Trump did with the Kennedy Center. They're like some
Oh
independent
god.
art and cultural center. He just fires all the share people so that he can appoint new share people so that they can unanimously make him chairman. And it was like,
Yeah.
how more
How?
transparently evil and corrupt can one person be? So I don't know. I don't know. It's
I mean, I think at that point, like, Anakin had been drinking the Kool-Aid so
mhm,
hard that he's just like, I don't care. Which is another thing that was like so so much to me. The reason that the Republic just kind of, especially towards the end, just did not work is because there was so much secrecy between
mhm,
the Senate and the Jedi, and so much distrust between both sides, even though they had a common enemy who was, Emperor Palpatine. Even though he wasn't emperor yet, they knew, all of them knew that he was super sketch, you know? And instead of like coming together and trying to do something, as Padme at least tried to suggest, like, we should probably inform the Jedi to see like what they're thinking about everything that's happening, because the Jedi were such an integral force
mhm,
in the
mhm.
Republic for centuries. But there had been so much mistrust growing between both sides that they just didn't communicate with each other. And Palpatine actually has a line that's really important. I think it's super relevant to right now too, where
Mhm,
he says something about like discord is an opportunity. Like, some people will see discord as an opportunity, and
mhm, mhm, yeah,
that's
right.
exactly what he did. Like, he created an ambience of uncertainty to the point that he used it to like slowly gain power at the beginning, by being, Amidala's counselor, someone like Amidala who was super young from kind of a backwater planet that was still powerful, and that she
Mhm,
was very well respected, and all these things. And he created the ambience of discord that allowed him to easily come into power. And that's exactly what Trump is doing,
mhm,
creating this
mhm.
ambience of like discord and instability, and people mistrusting everything they see. They mistrust the news, they mistrust their neighbors, they mistrust everybody,
Mhm,
to the point that, oh, Trump is our salvation.
mhm,
Let's
mhm.
raise him all the way up. And it's insane. When you watch the prequel trilogy and you see how Palpatine comes into power, you're like, that is so, it's fiction. Oh my God, there's no way people would allow this power
No,
hungry,
we're
crazy,
we're
insane
living it.
person,
Yeah.
and obviously he's not Trump is not the first person to become this, and he's not completely tyrannical yet. But we've seen it before in the past. We've seen
Mhm.
Franco and Napoleon
Mhm,
and
mhm, mhm.
Hitler
Mussolini.
and all
Mhm.
these. Yeah, but at the same time, there wasn't social media then. Like we couldn't
Mhm.
see the step by step. We only know what history tells us, and history is sometimes skewed by who won, who didn't, all these
Mhm.
things. And but with Trump, we've been able to see it in real time, as he himself, like the president of the United States, tweets, which to me
Mhm.
is so inane. Um, so we've seen it in real time. Us that grew up, with Star Wars, and it's just like it's a mind fuck.
Mhm.
Honestly,
Mhm.
it's just like, how is this happening?
It's very interesting because there's also on the flip side a lot of people that look at Star Wars but see it in the opposite way, right? They see how these far right conservatives that are offering those solutions, which by the way, like I mean, if history has taught us anything, it's like always be wary of one man or one person, usually
Yeah,
a man, unfortunately,
yeah,
who says that they have all the answers and
right,
all the solutions to all your problems. That's usually a red flag immediately. If someone says
yeah,
that, run away as far as you
yeah.
can.
Because
Uh,
nobody has all the answers.
but they see that as like, oh, this is the return of the Jedi. Like
Yeah,
Trump and his sycophants have come to purge the government from like all the radicals that have destroyed it from within, which is just like interesting to interpret it that way. But considering that the person who made the Star Wars has told you that it's in fact about the opposite thing, and you know what these people and Palpatine are espousing aren't Palpatine wasn't espousing unity and diversity, equity and inclusion and justice.
mhm,
uh, he was literally whitewashing no, stormtroopers, white, all
yeah,
humans, like no diversity, no inclusivity,
mhm,
rigid borders, like militaristic. It's literally about the purging of the other and not about rights and liberties. And Trump is doing that playbook, right? He's deporting like all the others. He's making trans people illegal and destroying their collective memory from history, or at least trying to, because you can't stop people from existing. So it's kind of like an interesting thing where it's just like your hero is someone that's just destroying other
yeah,
people that are just trying to live and exist, that are minorities that have been historically oppressed, and then this person's like a savior for what,
mhm,
so it's very interesting to see how media literacy can be twisted to just justify the narrative, right, that you built in your mind. And obviously it cuts both ways, because it's not as if we're immune to it.
yeah,
Like our biases obviously come into like how we experience media and how we interpret things, very much so. But there is kind of objective things that we can see about, like, oh, if someone is stepping on someone's neck, that's usually a bad thing.
yeah, mhm.
And when I see this person just imitate like the playbook of Emperor Palpatine, I was like, man, there's no way that you can think that this is Luke Skywalker. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. It's insane. It's actively insane. Whew. What a
But of all
what a
of, of
year.
all of all three, Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Padme, like whose discourse were you most drawn to? Because I honestly was a little disappointed with all three of them in many ways, because they're all trying to stand up to what Palpatine is doing, but it's in a
But
very
still be politically
passive.
correct at the
Right,
same time.
right.
Yeah, which is, I mean, they had no backing yet, so it's kind of hard to show your hand and be too, aggressive at this point in time, especially if you're trying to do it completely upfront. I guess they were all just kind of testing the waters, but of all three, I still think Bail Organa was the best one for
Hmm.
me. I mean, like you said, Padme was completely in denial. She's completely biased with her relationship with Anakin, and with the fact that she still respected Palpatine because he was a counselor to her when
Hmm.
she
Hmm.
was queen. Um, so she still, which is kind of insane, especially, and obviously the Clone Wars animated series came after, episode
Hmm.
3, but
Hmm.
especially when you see her character development in the Clone Wars and the fact that she was majorly involved in everything that was happening, and you can see that her character in the Clone Wars was already suspecting Palpatine.
Mhm.
This scene is a little discordant with that, but
Mhm.
it still makes sense in the context that we had when the first three films, when the first three films of the prequel trilogy came out, before the animated series.
Mhm.
And Mon Mothma also, we really know nothing about her at this point and who she is. Like, we don't get
Yep.
her backstory until Andor, which, by the way, is fantastic and makes so much sense. Like, it
Mhm.
informs her character so much. But at this point, she's clearly accepted that the Republic is a Republic in name only, but
Mhm.
she's still not ready to do something outside of the official channels. The only one that seems to be able to, or is thinking ahead, is Bail Organa.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and we know for a fact that he does a lot of this eventually with the aid of Mon Mothma. So
Mhm.
they're kind of, a little bit on the same page. But you can tell, like, with that comment also, like, oh, I'm not saying I'm a separatist, but I kind of am because the Republic is no longer the Republic. So I think he was testing the waters even more, like, oh, how many of these people will actually be willing to, once we tried this last diplomatic attempt, to be able to go with me behind the scenes and start actually planning a rebellion.
Mhm.
So out of the three, definitely fail. But like you said, there was still, it wasn't even affirmative enough,
Right.
especially like at this point, it's pretty advanced that the corruption in the Republic is completely widespread. Like, they had known from A Force Away, from Phantom Menace, that the Senate had stopped working.
Mhm.
So the fact that at this point, all these years later, they're still thinking about debating it in a non-working Senate is
Mhm. Mhm.
kind of mind-blowing. But I mean, we've seen it happen. We're seeing it happen right now. So
Unfortunate, unfortunate.
mhm.
And right now we talked about Andor season 2 coming up on the horizon, which obviously will continue the story of an already
Talk
amazing
about
show.
ad nauseum because we love it so much.
And we will. There's
Yeah.
there's so much to keep talking about, and we will continue talking about it. But there's the next trilogy of books, Reign of the Empire, that are coming out, and the first one, The Mask of Fear, is coming out next week by Alexander Freed, one of like the best Star Wars authors that I've had the pleasure of reading his books. I mean, Alphabet Squadron is one of the my favorite of the new canon books, and the rumor on the street is that that book is particularly good and
Hmm.
definitely in the vein of Andor. So people that like that show will definitely like this book.
Yeah.
We know that Bale is in it. We know that Mon Mothma is in it. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading that and having that as a bridge as we
Mhm.
watch the Delegation of 2000 and Revenge of the Sith and await Andor season 2. This book hopefully keeps us, uh, calm and satiated as we traverse the rocky waters to Andor season 2. But one thing I this is not the Andor season 2 speculation episode, but I will do
Mhm.
a small little wish list thing, and it's one, we know my Mothma's gonna be in it because she's the
Oh
co-lead
yeah.
with Cassian, but not just a Bail Organa appearance. It'd be nice to get a little
Yeah.
nod to Padme and be like, "Hey,
Mhm.
she helped get all this
Yeah.
going with the Delegation of 2000." So just a little, just a little throwaway line in the show, I think would give Padme
Yeah.
her due because I think we haven't gotten good Padme content for a long time. So
Yeah. Not since the animated show,
yeah, I mean
I think.
we've
Yeah.
gotten those E.K. Johnston books, the Queen's
Yeah.
Peril, and that trilogy.
Mhm.
I forgot the name of the other two, but I want a name drop for Padme in Andor season 2. Anything you're
Mhm.
looking forward to expand Delegation of 2000 from deleted scene to reality?
Yeah, I would really like to see, a bit more of those conversations about how they got everything going. But other than that, I'm looking forward to Andor season 2. I don't want to speculate too much about it because I didn't speculate all at all almost for Andor season 1,
Hmm.
and I was like blown
Blown
away. So
away.
I don't honestly want to overthink it, but there's going to be something that they do with that probably because it's so ingrained into everything that happened. So I guess we'll see. I'm just looking forward to more awesome monologues. I
Yes.
really am. because
Yes.
there were so many gems in Andor season 1. I can't get enough.
Maybe instead of 4 short ones like we got this in season 1, we'll just get
Mhm.
like an extremely long one from Cassian. And if that's the case, I'll die because that's the thing that I'm kind of looking forward to in season 2 and season 1. Cassian, as we talked about ad nauseum,
Mhm.
we were talking about season 1.
Yeah,
Cassian was kind of a passive character in which
yeah,
he's the main character, but he doesn't initiate
yeah,
the plot. He reacts
yeah.
to the plot. And
Mhm.
I hope that now with season 1 ending with him finally becoming active in choosing to
Yeah,
become part of the rebellion with Luthen, that his journey in season 2 is more of an active journey in which
yeah,
he
like,
is
actually
the
pushing forward the
instigator.
story. Yeah, mhm.
Yeah, so but we'll
Yeah,
see, we'll
I
see.
agree. Mhm,
There's only a short wait, only 2 months
mhm.
until Andor season 2. So it's gonna be I mean, there's gonna be horrors along the way with the news cycle. Hopefully
Yeah.
no more planes that go down until
Oh
then.
god, right.
We wish everyone to be safe in their travels, but but I think yeah, for now we'll just end it I think with Leia's last line in Rogue One, hope. That's always what we have to have, hope. Or like Gandalf said, a fool's hope. There never was much hope, only a fool's hope. And that's all we can
Yeah,
have.
yep, that's better than none. Yeah, so I think with that, we are done for today. We are Triad of the Force. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know if you knew about these deleted scenes, if you liked them, if you think they would have been so excellent in the film, if they would have been included as we do. If you have any thoughts about Andor season 2, if you have any questions for us at the Triad. And, until then, may the Force be with you.